Hi friends, welcome. My name is Marv Machura. This is episode number 2 of Machura on McLuhan, where I discuss and present the various ideas about Marshall McLuhan media ecology and how it affects us in our current life. Well, the medium is the message is the meme that perhaps even if you've never heard of Marshall McLuhan, you've heard that phrase, the medium is the message. Today I want to talk about what does that mean. And we might as well start from the very beginning with Marshall McLuhan's book, Understanding Media, which he published in 1964. It wasn't his first book, but this was the seminal book that established Marshall McLuhan as a national figure and his ideas about media and media ecology to the world. So it begins with chapter 1, which is titled, The Medium is the Message. And I'll just read the first sentence to you. It goes, in a culture like ours, long accustomed to splitting and dividing all things as a means of control, it's sometimes a bit of a shock to be reminded that in operational and practical fact, the medium is the message. So what does that mean? First of all, let's just back up to the beginning part of that sentence. In a culture like ours, long accustomed to splitting and dividing all things as a means of control. What he's talking about is a culture like ours, the Western world culture that began with Gutenberg and the Gutenberg Galaxy. In fact, one of his books in the 50s is called the Gutenberg Galaxy. And what that, the influence of that technology on us, the movable type printing press, the medium allowed us to become detached from holistic kind of views of the world. It unleashed the divide and conquer, splitting and dividing as a means of control. The nature of society, the nature of man. It spawned the Industrial Revolution as perhaps the greatest example of that. The factory system. Henry Ford. We control things by splitting and dividing. You know, William Wordsworth, the great romantic poet in the early 1800s, who saw the birth of the Industrial Revolution taking hold and how people were responding to even literary criticism and science. He has a line in one of his poems that goes, "We murder to dissect." You know, like we kill the animal when we dissect it to understand it. It's a statement which is very much critical of the industrial method which produced the classroom, let's say, that produced so much. And it still has a huge influence on us today. It's not over yet, of course, even though new media and tribal extensions of mankind have entered the world. And I'll talk about that more, why some of Marshall McLuhan's predictions seem to not be happening just yet, as this older media is very reluctant to let go of its hold over us, where we want to divide, analyze, classify as a means of control. And when that particular world view comes into contact with a Marshall McLuhan idea, like the medium is the message, it's very shocking. It's very hard for somebody who's used to classifying and dividing to understand things in a more holistic way or a phenomenological way. It's difficult for them. The scientific method is their comfort zone. The if-then probability, those very logical kind of prospects that are very fundamental to the Gutenberg Galaxy, but not necessarily applicable in the electronic age, which we now have entered and are well on our way towards fully enveloping us with artificial technology and other types of media that are on the verge of changing our world one more time. As Marshall McLuhan would say, the medium is the message. One time, Marshall McLuhan, he said, it's really difficult to explain media to people because it surrounds us, it affects us, and as he said, it's like explaining water to a fish. How do you explain water to a fish? Well, one thing you could do is you could take the fish out of the water, and then the fish would then understand what the water is. When I was doing my research, my master's research, and I was thinking about these kind of concepts, I thought, well, perhaps if you take some kind of cultural relic that has traveled through time, like a snowball, and I picked English language arts curriculum in the province of Alberta, which I know, and being an English teacher, it's something that I'm very familiar with, but it existed prior to radio, and then it again changed when television entered. So as the world would go, one way of explaining media to a fish is to look at that artifact of English language arts curriculum and what was taught prior to radio, what was taught after radio, what was taught prior to television, what was taught after television. And moving into our own age, it's still applicable. What was taught prior to computers, word processing, and then after word processing. As an example, to show that in fact, in actual purpose and practicality, the medium is the message. It's not the content of the media that matters. In many ways, the content kind of stays the same, although it's always changing, given the media ecology that surrounds the content. But the content is not where we should look at for understanding the media itself. It's not the content of the books that were printed with the Gutenberg printing press. It was the Gutenberg printing press itself that altered and changed society. Again, the medium is the message. It's hard to explain to people how a printing press could have such a major impact on everything, and in fact it does. So the medium, the printing press, the computer, the video presentation through YouTube, it changes fundamentally the ecology, or the water, the air that we live in, what we breathe, and affects us as human beings in this world, much more than the content of say, what's on YouTube. What was it like prior to YouTube, and then what was like after YouTube? You'll see very fundamental changes if you analyze it that way. Same as before cell phones and after cell phones, the telephone itself. That McLuhan does talk about in this book, Understanding Media. So let me wrap up today with that final thought that it's not the content. It's the medium. It's the medium that shapes us, that is something worthy of study, and something that is still kind of shocking to people to even study. It's still not very clear for people to understand that in actual and practical fact, the medium is the message, because we're still very much fundamentally people who are splitting and dividing and trying to understand things in an outdated way. And the shock value of McLuhan is still there. But we are here, thank you everybody for joining me, to start pulling this apart and start looking at it in the big picture, analyzing it, moving forward in some way to understand our world a little better, and how the medium is still the message. So thank you, everyone. We'll be back with more information and more studies of this nature as we travel forward. Thank you.